There was infighting among all of these people, and there was also the influx of another civilization from the star system called Sirius A, which I spoke to you about in the last time I did a seminar here. Now, what do you think happened to the remnants of the reptilians after Lemuria sank? Anybody? Many of them, if not all that were left, went underground. They went inside the earth. And I mentioned this in the lecture last night at the library, and I'll repeat it for you here. The earth is hollow. All planets that are formed the way the earth was formed are hollow. When you have a molten piece of material ejected from a star, as that molten piece spins in space and cools off, the material inside pushes to the side. And as it pushes to the side, the gases that are formed are pushed out of the poles of this now circular object, creating openings where the gas has now been ejected. And what is left is trapped between two platelets, the molten lava, which is between the outer crust and the inner crust, and then the hollow space. Now the pressure created by this molten lava that's now trapped between these two crusts is ejected specifically at the 19th parallel. That's where the Hawaiian volcanoes are. If you look along the 19th parallel, most of the volcanoes are along that area, or within a couple of 100 miles of it. If you look at other planets, all of them have volcanic activity at the 19th parallel. The largest volcano in this solar system is in Mars at the 19th parallel. The red spot at Jupiter, 19th parallel. Moons of Neptune and Jupiter and Saturn have craters and volcanic eruptions at the 19th parallel. This is a scientific fact. This information was embedded in the geometry of the pyramids and monuments on Mars. If you take the trigonometry of the Martian pyramids and the face on Mars, and you do the math, it tells the story of the 19th parallel. And where do you find that replicated on Earth? At the Giza Plateau. The face on Mars is equal or equivalent to the face on the Sphinx. And what body does the Sphinx have? A lion. There's that lion again. And so, I have another flowchart to give you, which will show you what the reptilians did, because they don't give up, ever. They are insidious in what they do. They decided, now that they were inside the Earth, they were not on the moon anymore, they were cut off basically from the Draco star system. What are they going to do? They wanted to recapture the Earth in the best way possible, and the best way would be by genetic breeding, hybridization with the human beings on the planet. And here I need to give you another story. Those of you who are familiar with the Bible story of how creatures or Adam was created, the story of Adam. All of the Bible is symbolic. It is an allegory, not to be taken literally. And when there was a peace treaty at one point between the humans and the reptilians, the peace treaty was that they would try to create a new being which had the semblance or the mixture of all the genetics, not only of the reptilians and the Atlans, but of all the other civilizations in the galaxy that had an interest in the Earth. And this prototype was going to be called Adam, which in ancient Hebrew language means from the earth. And that's why in the Bible it says, let us make man in our image. God didn't say, I will make man in my image. Let us make man in our image, plural. And the story of the removal of the rib from Adam to create Eve, to create a female, is an allegorical story of using the foundational reptilian androgynous body and separating it into a male and female figure. That's an allegorical story of the separation into the sexes from a reptilian body. And so I'm going to give you a flow chart, and it might look a little bit messy, but it's the best I can do given the circumstances, of how the flow of civilization and reptilian DNA got into all of you. Because every single person on this planet, whether they're human or not, has reptilian DNA. And that's a unique situation in the galaxy. That's why there's such an interest in this planet from elsewhere, because nowhere else is there such a genetic mixture. And so, if we start out, and I'll try to make this as neat as possible, but I have to write small. If we start out with the Draco and the Lyrian civilizations, we find that there was a split here to Maldek and Mars on this side, and here was the Pleiades, or the Atlans, and this then went to Sumer, and this then went to Atlantis. And I'll do some work here so it won't be too confusing first. And here we have Venus and the moon, and then here we have Lemuria. So we're all on the same page with this so far. This is reptilian form, this is human form. Pure human form, which nobody on this planet is a pure human form. Now, from Atlantis, or from Mars, we have Sumer, and then Sumer led into Babylon. Now this is very important. Babylon is very important in the reptilian ritual and ceremony. The Babylonians spread out to become the Khazars in the Caucasus Mountain, and they in turn colonized Europe and the Middle East. Who then in turn colonized the Americas. Sumerian civilization actually led into the Phoenicians. They were the forerunners of the Egyptians, who, by the way, now this is where it gets complicated, the refugees from Atlantis also colonized Egypt. Okay, this is going to get a little messy now. I have an idea. I want to do the reptilians in red. Oh, let me finish this part. Then the Egyptians actually had an influence in Greece, and Greece actually became part of Rome and Spain, which led to the colonization of the Americas as well. Now, as far as the reptilians are concerned, once the Lemuria sank, they went underground, and I told you about the hybridization program. That began in Sumer. That was one of the first places that the human reptilian DNA mix for the shape-shifting reptilians began. And they also colonized India, China, and Japan. Now, in Sumer and Babylon, this is where the hybridization of the reptilians and the humans went into full force. It was here that they created a unique hybridization blend of 50% genetics reptilian, 50% genetics human. These then became what was known as the blue bloods. Who became the royalty of the earth. They call them blue bloods because their bloodstreams have a high copper content. When copper oxidizes, it turns blue or green color. When iron blood oxidizes, it turns red or brown. The Indian caste system is a direct replica of the Draconian or Lemurian hierarchy. They had different levels or species that would perform different tasks. They had a warrior caste, a spiritual caste, a worker caste, scientist caste. All of these levels were within the reptilian hierarchy and was recreated especially in India in the Hindu religion or the Indian civilization. And there are documents over 50,000 years old in India that talk about this exact event. And they also talk, and these are called the Vedas. And in fact, they also talk about a vehicle called a Vimana, which is a craft that can fly into the atmosphere or beyond the atmosphere and shoot lances that can disrupt the ground and create mushroom clouds, nuclear devices. This was written 50,000 years ago. And those were written from something else. They were copied from something else. But the newest ones are 50,000 years old. This area of the world right now is very, very important because the royalty of the earth call themselves the Illuminati. In Latin it means the enlightened ones or the illuminated ones. Officially, this group began in 1776, created in Bavaria by a man by the name of Adam Weishaupt. That's the official creation of the Illuminati. He put together this organization in Bavaria to pull together wealthy nobility and royalty to create a better world for the earth. Now that is an interesting date, 1776, because what else happened that year? Declaration of Independence and the creation of the United States of America, which, by the way, which I'll explain to you in a moment, is not even a country. And so, the Illuminati finally in 1776 decided to come out of the woodwork to make themselves known publicly, when in fact they existed from day zero. Really, they existed in their present form from the days of Sumer and Babylon. And they worshipped a pair of deities, a male and female. Male was called Nimrod. And the female was called Semiramis. In Egypt, these were changed to Osiris and Isis, but they were the same deity. Their symbol, I'm not the greatest artist, was the fleur-de-lis. or the lily, symbolized by the lily flower, the three-pronged flower. And Nimrod, as the god in Sumer, was depicted with 3 horns. There are also sexual connotations to this because it's a very sexual religion. And he required blood sacrifice. Now, the disturbing thing is that in modern times, the same scenario was created in religion in the Middle East, only the same figure they used as Jesus and Mary. There's always male, female, male, female, male, female, one creating the other. There are statues in Sumer showing Semiramis with a human form, a reptilian face, reptilian claws and feet, holding a hybrid baby. That's what they worshipped in Sumer. You can see the picture in any magazine or book related to Sumerian civilization. But all religion from that point onward was based on this type of scenario. Can I erase this? Yes?
Yes.
I have a lot of information. I'm going to try to get through as much of it as I possibly can. I've only gone through this very first part of 3 pages that I needed to tell you about. Bless you, whoever it is. Now, I will tell you that the number 13 is very significant to the Illuminati, because in the last 500 years or so, also even last 1,000 years, there are 13 families that control this planet. 13 was also the number of colonies of the United States originally. 13 is also the age when the ancient Hebrews said that children become adults, what they call a bar mitzvah. And 13 is actually the true number of zodiac signs. One sign has been deleted for the past 1,000 years or more. And that sign was located between Scorpio and Sagittarius. And can you imagine what the symbol of that zodiac sign was? It was a dragon, a reptile. That's the 13th zodiac sign. 13 is significant. Do you want to know the names of these 13 families? Now I'm going to give it to you. But I need to tell you something else. 13 is at the top of the pyramid of families. Beneath them is called the Committee of 300. Those are 300 families who are descended from those original 13 who form the next level of their control pyramid. But the 13 are as follows. These are the families. Some of the names you will recognize, some you will not.
there significance to the order of the names?
No. One, two, three, four, five, 12, 13. These are the 13 families. These families control every minute detail of your life. Can you see it? Can you see that? Yeah. Some of them you can remember or recognize, some you may not be so familiar with. Where I have slashes, the Sinclairs are also spelled St. Clair. The Rothschilds were originally known as the Bowers. The Warburgs were originally known as Del Banco, hence the name bank or banking. The Windsors, the proper British family, actually are German and changed their name in World War I so that people wouldn't think that they were German. But their real name is Saxe-Coburg-Gotha. And same thing with Cavendish, whose sublevels are called the Kennedys. Some of these people are in public power right now, and some are not. The Plantagenet family has its center in France, but also sent emissaries or colonies to Scotland and Ireland. Hanover, of course, is a big German city with that name. Everyone knows about the Rothschilds, which is a German derivation of Rothschild, which means the red shield, hence the Red Cross, which you see almost every day, which is also on the flag of Switzerland, which is also not a real country. The Krupps, oh yes, the Krupps, claim to fame, they built the ovens in the concentration camp, and all of the machinations for the Nazi Empire. The de Medicis, you know, Italian family, very well known in banking. Romanovs, Russian royalty. My great uncle had the great distinction of having them assassinated in 1917. The Rockefellers, you know, were actually German. Kennedys, of course, you know, Cavendish, same thing. And the Habsburgs, who are the royalty of Austria. These families control everything in your life. Every single thing in your life.
You didn't make a comment about the Bruce.
Oh yes, the Bruce, one of the strongest families in Scotland. What movie was made about them? Braveheart. I happen to know one of their descendants who interviewed me for a book she's writing. Oh, and by the way, all of these are shape-shifting reptilians. Every single one of them. And do you remember a couple of years ago a claymation, no, it wasn't claymation, it was actually human beings dressed in puppets that did a show about being dinosaurs in the old times? Do you remember that show?
Yes.
And what was the name of that dinosaur family? The Sinclairs. Remember that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sinclair Oil.
Sinclair Oil. The gas station. What's on their gas station? A dinosaur. It's in front of your nose if you look at it.
So is that actually how you know about it?
They can shapeshift into reptilian form. They have a 50-50 split of human reptilian DNA. Most of you have more of a 90-10 split. You all have reptilian DNA. But once you approach this, you are blue blood. You are royalty. the global elite, the rulers of the New World Order. And you shapeshift. And you need to do ceremony, including blood ritual and hormone intake of human beings in order to maintain a human form. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Anybody need to take a bathroom break? How about if we have a 10-minute break? Is that all right? Okay, and then I'll go more into this in the Committee of 300 and what's in store for the future. Beneath this group, this 13 families, is the Committee of 300. The Committee of 300 is the next layer in this pyramid of control. And guess where you all are? At the bottom layer. And isn't it interesting that on the US dollar is a pyramid with an eye watching everything that's underneath the pyramid? And how do they explain that Egyptian Sumerian symbol on a US dollar? Do they explain it when you're in school? No. Do they say why there is an eye watching everything? No. What does the eye represent? The eye represents, if you remember, Osiris, the all-seeing eye, which goes back to the reptilian sun god of Nimrod. And it is a sun god because reptilians worship sun, and one of their symbols is a blazing sun. And you've seen them all over the place. Okay, sometimes they look like flames coming out of the sun, but in fact it's in the center of the Argentinian flag, where the winged reptilians are. They're all over the place if you keep your eyes open. Now, in addition to this symbol being on the US dollar, those of you who have a dollar left in your wallet, if you look underneath where it used to say E pluribus unum, it now says Novus Ordo Seclorum, which means New World Order. That's on your money. Okay, so it's already part of your money. And in addition, there's a globalization or unification of all the currencies of the earth, especially in Europe, where they use now the euro dollar, which the Europeans didn't like the word dollar in their currency, so now they just call it the euro. And if you look at the exchange rate, it's basically 1 for 1. US dollar will get you a euro. In South America, Ecuador has adopted the US dollar as its national currency. So has Costa Rica. Most of those people never saw a dollar in their life, but it's their national currency. And if you go to Argentina, the peso is 1-to-1 with the dollar. So Ronald Reagan and George Bush got their wish when they said that they wanted from Alaska to Argentina one economic unit. It exists right now. Europe, same thing. There is a United States of Europe. You can drive across any border without the use of a passport or even stopping. They'll stop you if they want to, but you don't have to stop. You don't need a passport. When you land at an airport in Europe, there is 2 lines, one for European market members and everybody else. And in Switzerland, there's even a line if you have a US or Canadian passport, there's a separate line for you. So there's all of this going on all over the earth, and if you travel a lot, you get to see all of this. Now, may I erase this part also? By the way, if you're interested in some of the names of this Committee of 300, I'll just give you a sample. One of the names, which you may not recognize, is called Agnelli. Agnelli, and they own the Fiat Corporation. And they tell the Italian government what to do. There is also the Spencers, Carringtons, Norman, Ford, Tafts, Roosevelt, Russell, Stewart spelled both ways with a U and an EW, Seaton, Hamilton, Campbell, Bush, Douglas, Montgomery, Balliol, Graham, Lindsay, Cameron, Wilson, Morgan, Harriman, Carnegie, Mellon, Oppenheimer, Rhodes, Hines, Savoy, Schiff, Kuhn, Loeb, Coolidge, and Delano. These are just samples of the Committee of 300 surnames that are being used. And I'll erase this now so I can give you some more information. Now, as I mentioned before the break, when these shape-shifting people do their ceremony, it always involves the use of human blood and hormones, because when you are trying to maintain a particular form, you need to intake the genetics of that form to maintain the integrity of it. Otherwise, you regress to your original form, which in their case would be reptilian. And you've heard the old stories, and there's even been movies and comedy made out of it, where there are these wealthy families in Europe, or even royalty, who have this family member that's locked away in a dungeon or in a tower because he's very strange. And whenever the people who are guests in the castle or the building go to look, they find this gigantic reptilian-like creature living locked away. It's because he reverted back to the original form and did not shapeshift any longer. He got stuck in the reptilian form. And as it's turning out, as the centuries are going by and the interbreeding and the intermarriage continues, they're finding it more and more difficult to maintain a human form. And so they're doing more and more ceremony on what is called the morphogenetic grid. And I know many of you have heard of this before. The Earth is very much like a body. Just like you have a chakra system and you have the meridians that come out of the chakra system, the Earth has energy centers and ley lines that come out of the energy centers and crisscross like a grid or a matrix. And on certain places where they intersect, there is a powerful energy vortex created. And that grid, or that matrix of energy around the Earth, is called the morphogenetic grid. And the reason the word genetic is in it is because it resonates to the occupants of the planet, so that there's a connection between the energy of the Earth and the energy of the humans or creatures that live on it, creating an interlocking unit called morphogenetic grid. If you're a chiropractor or an acupuncturist or acupressure, and you press a certain point of the body, you are actually affecting other parts of the body that are connected to that pressure point. Same on the Earth. If you perform a ceremony or create an energy pressure point at a specific part of the Earth's morphogenetic grid, you will then affect all the other parts of the Earth that you want to connect with. They perform their ritual and ceremony on such locations. For example, the pyramids of Egypt are located on a very big center point on the morphogenetic grid. Montauk is located at the edge of a morphogenetic grid. This point here in Montauk, Long Island, connects to Land's End in England. There's a direct connection. And when Aleister Crowley did his sexual magical rituals in Land's End, it connected directly to Montauk Point. Montauk Point is also part of the old Atlantean civilization. And it is in fact the top of a mountain chain that connects all the way down to the Caribbean Ocean. And the Montauk Indians' leader, they called a pharaoh. In fact, the name of the Montauk princess, her last name is Pharaoh. And, of course, that is related to the kings in Egypt, which then fall back to their common ancestor in the Atlantean time period. And in fact, up until the early part of this century, you could see the tops of pyramids along the beaches in Montauk Point, which have subsequently been covered up. In fact, the town of Montauk is located directly over a gigantic underground pyramid, which the government was very interested in accessing because of the technology that is inside of it. Basically, the control group, the Illuminati, is interested in mind controlling the entire population. Because let's face it, there's only a few thousand of them, and there's 6 billion of all of you. There's just not enough armies in the world that can control that size of a population. So the best way to do it is through mind control, and that's where the Montauk Project came into being, because it enabled them to test and develop specific mind control devices and techniques that were able to be put out into the public. And that's one of the things I was involved in at the time. When they do their rituals, it's on specific dates that mean something to them. Generally, it coincides with the full moon. One of their greatest holidays occurs on what you would call Halloween. That is a very important date for the reptilians. And that's where Halloween got the reputation of having ghosts and goblins and weird things happening, because that was a ceremony that they performed every October 31st. And recently, if you can recall, what incident occurred on Halloween that involved the deaths of a couple of hundred people in an instant? Egypt Air 990. Okay. That was part of a ritual ceremony slaughter. And where did it happen? Not far from Montauk Point. Okay, on this line. What else happened along that line that continues out like this? Well, let's map it. Here we had Egypt Air 990. Here we had, this is Long Island. Here we had TWA 800. Here we had Swissair 101. Gee, that looks kind of suspicious to me. Oh wait, there's something else. Right over here. Someone just said it.